into body prep and an embalmed body. One of the biggest things I think that we as professionals need to be educated on is how to handle an autopsy body that wants a shades of green burial.
Great topic.
Yeah, so here we go. You get your body back from the morgue and they're a bloody mess, and you've got to fix the skull cap and you've got to fix the internal organ area. So you take out your viscera bag and you set it between the body's knees. And you do all your aspirating in that chest cavity. And this is why I tell people, tangent, when they ask me, well, I want to go to mortuary school, I want to be a funeral director, I want to do what you do. Should I get both my associates, both licensed, funeral director and embalming? And I'm like, yes, because you're going to need that knowledge. So you aspirate out the cavity, which is something you learn when you embalm bodies. You may have to aspirate through the nose. You may have to aspirate the mouth. But you get all that blood that's floating, or that fluid that's floating in the rib cage and in the pelvic area, and you soak it all up. And then sawdust. I have the softest and the not chunky, can you imagine shoving chunks of sawdust into someone? No.
Yeah.
It's where you can sprinkle it like Salt Bay, and you sprinkle it and you just put it along the bottom, and then with your gloves on, you reach into that viscera bag and you're pulling out the cut organs and you're laying them in there. They've made it easy for you. They've cut them up into nice little slices. You just lay them in the pelvic cavity, and you start filling that area first, and you move your way into the chest cavity. And then you go back in there and you place sawdust bay again. You sprinkle a little sawdust in there. Then you go back and you lay another layer of organs. The brain does not go back into the skull just like it wouldn't when you embalm a body. All of that goes back into the chest cavity. And then for the final hurrah, to keep it from leaking, you do another little sprinkling of sawdust, and then lay that web roll on top of the sternum that you've laid back in there. You're going to sew the chest cavity up. You make sure that web roll stays underneath the skin. When you pull that skin together on the baseball stitch, you're poking that web roll, make sure it stays under. So if you're seeing anything poke up between your stitches, it's white web roll. But you don't want that. You don't want anything to wick out. So you want to make sure it's in there. It's also good to use the wax covered suturing string. Yeah, so you don't have any wicking there. I honestly don't get a lot of wicking when I do this method and make sure everything is really, really dry. But for the sake of, learning, make sure everything is really dry. And then, you just do your baseball stitch up. You take a wad of web roll and you kind of fluff it up, and you place that in the skull cap, just like we do anytime that we're doing an autopsy body. And maybe instead of using the clamps, do another line of web roll and some putty, and then sew the skull shut. You could have a little movement up here. That's something that you explain to the family. But if you've sewn the baseball stitch securely in the back and you have some of that putty there, you really have very minimal movement at all.
Well, and it's essentially anybody who breads the viscera is what it's called, what we kind of call it, or it's termed, where you put breading, or the sawdust, or an embalmer will use a paraformaldehyde powder on that viscera to put back in, rather than put it just the bag in. And there are people who swear by breading the viscera, where you're just coating them in that so that it's absorbing any of that stuff. So it's very similar to an embalmed treatment of the viscera. There's just no chemical in it because you're using the sawdust. So that'll regenerate and break down naturally. So it's not too different, but it's putting in the effort.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which with anything, I think that's, like you said, just the, setting features for an ID view and offering an ID view, whereas not just saying, well, if you want to view them, you need to pay more because it takes time for us to prepare them or to do something. And there are funeral directors that do that. It's not illegal, but it's not
ethical.
It's not the greatest. No, it's frowned upon by, yeah, for sure. So here's one big thought that I have. I think that within the next few years, we're going to see traditional burial and cremation prices being equal, where one's going to come up a little, one's going to come down.
Uh-huh.
Because businesses, I think, in order to sustain, there's going to have to be a switch. And I think natural burial is going to kind of be that green burial, where everything will eventually be along the same lines if we want anything to sustain. Thoughts on that?
I think embalmings will go down as consumers are made more aware. It's hitting the mainstream. I mean, I've been tooting this horn for like 7 years, but now it's becoming a thing.
Yeah.
Where celebrities are now doing natural burials. I mean, we all saw Buscemi's.
Steve Buscemi, yeah.
Yeah, and then you see the funeral director helping, and you're like, I know. Yay!
Excited that.
You're just like so happy. But yeah, I think that embalming will go down, and that's not a knock at embalmers. Embalmers get so mad at me when I tell them you need to be prepared for something else, because this is not going to be around forever.
Right.
Mark my words, 20 years from now, embalming will be the minority of what we're seeing, if it isn't already. And I see the value of embalming. I absolutely do. I am a licensed embalmer. I used to embalm. I loved it. I just don't think that's what the community at large, the consumers, are going to want. I don't think natural burial is going to overtake cremation by any means. I do think the prices will eventually all level out. It's like not everybody wants to eat at Perry's Steakhouse for dinner. Some people just want to go to McDonald's. So that's kind of like funeral homes too. Not everybody wants to go to the fancy white glove funeral home. Some
Right.
people need just the simple guy that's in the shopping center to handle it. And with the oncoming options like water cremation, known as aquamation or alkaline hydrolysis, or how many names do we have for this
100,
technology?
yeah.
Boy, marketing that, let me tell you, has been fun. But yeah, between that and now what is happening in Washington with recomposition, I want to be composted. I don't even want to be naturally buried anymore. Put me in Katrina Spade's little tube, roll me around, and make me into soil. That's what I want. And as people find that there are more options available, I think traditional burial is just going to continue to slide down the slope.
Yeah.
Because there are amazing things that we can do. But yeah, I think the prices, Melissa's tangents, the prices are going to level off, to answer your initial question.
Yeah, people are like, well, it's so cheap, that's why I choose it. And I'm like, I don't think you're going to have to choose based on that anymore, because I hate
Right.
People are like, well, we have to choose this because this is what we have in our pocket, essentially. But it's not always what they want to do. And so I will love when things do balance out a little more. And yes, it means one might have to come up for the other to come down. But if somebody wants a traditional service, I'd like to be able to give it to them for a better price than what we can, than what the businesses are balanced. But it's all based on business model, how their revenue is happening and things. And it just can't be balanced right now, I think, until they get a little more progressive with thinking, I think, within ownership and such.
Yeah, I want to touch on that. You've got a lot of students that are coming into the industry, and they've got all these bright, beautiful ideas, and we see them on funeral group support groups on Facebook where they're being shot down right and left, and they're just getting so downtrodden. They come into the industry with these great ideas, and then nobody wants to change anything. So like, they're all waiting for ownership to die or move on so they can make things great. And we know the owners aren't watching these videos. So like, what do we do?
Yeah, there's a huge divide right now, and it's like slowly trying to bridge some of it, but it's waiting for generation to maybe shift. And unfortunately, I think it's just going to take time, because you can't change people's thoughts and minds, just like you can't change some of the younger people's minds on the fact that they don't know everything and can't just, jump into the business making $100,000.
Nobody makes that much. I don't know where they get this idea.
Yeah. I'm not rolling in cash. There is no cash piles at my house. But, I think there's a false thinking on both sides, and both sides are like putting their feet in the ground, and it's that gap. But we see it often where somebody wants to try and get a view of what the business is, but the business people don't, people owning and directing don't want to give those opportunities. So then you get somebody going into the business, going through school, going this, they've never even seen a funeral. And so you get this person showing up on your doorstep first day of apprenticeship, and they've never really even worked in a funeral home, seen a funeral, been around a body except for their ones at mortuary school. And that is a huge problem that I'm seeing. And so then the owners are pissed, because then they have to spend way more time, because I love Australia. Like, you have to go do whatever before you can even get into school. Aside from like my niece, who we brought home and everything, but she was embalmed and such. So I cannot even imagine the face of every funeral director in this area if somebody walked in and said, I want to take home my mom. She's not embalmed, and we're going to keep her. And then can you come and help us take her to the cemetery when the time's right? They'd be like, no. And
that would basically be my
no. And a lot of people would, because they have no idea how to work through those steps. It's outside the norm.
There's actually a really good book for that. Thankfully, we have a book by Elizabeth Fournier called The Green Burial Guidebook, and then another one by Lucinda Herring called Reimagining Death. Those two are phenomenal, and they've come out in the last couple of months.
I think it's good to know where to go for your resources, and I think a lot of people don't know where those resources are. When they're not in touch with the online and things, they will just be like, yeah. And I can see that same response with a home funeral or a green burial or anything that was outside of this norm.
Yeah.
You either got a traditional or you got a direct cremation. Those are the two things that are on my menu. You either pick A or B. This is what I'm doing. End of story. And that's giving us a really bad rap, because there's a lot of people that are doing that.
Correct. I agree with you.
And if you're going to say that to me as the funeral director calling you, what are you saying to the family? So we are closing out our green burial video, episode 1, because we're going to do more of these. We want to know what you want to know about the process. If you're wondering what's okay in your area, if you have had an experience with this, you want to share. If you just are a professional and want to know how to handle a certain situation, make sure to comment below, drop emails to any of us. I'll have our emails posted down in the subject part. And make sure to pass on the questions, and we'll come back with episode 2 and we'll answer those questions for you, because we want people to be educated, including us, including the professionals, about green burials, about taking somebody home. We're going to do another video just about that part, and really try and keep educating ourselves. And we're going to try and stump Melissa with some questions she hasn't had yet.
All right. I'm looking forward to it.
It's a challenge. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you guys for joining us. We got Miss Daisy has been a feisty little contender for the video. Melissa's got Kermit hanging out with her at her space too, being good. So thanks for watching, guys, and catch us on the next video. Bye.
Bye.